was a one-off working effects prop for one story, the invisible ending. That was all. This was also in 1977. We'd had a man on the moon for 8 years, but we couldn't make radio control systems that would not drive something into the scenery. We're working, and I can use the frequency here because you're familiar with it, because it's the same, 27 megahertz AM. That frequency is so prone to interference, it's unbelievable. Anybody ever used it? That we did. Both sides of the Atlantic. The stories, one of the urban myth that I designed and created K9 is actually wrong. That was Tony. I did a lot of work later on. But the urban myth that K9 used to interfere with the cameras and the cameras used to interfere with K9 is perfectly true. You get a camera, remember we're talking big studio cameras, you may see pictures of them later, certain pictures in the book, more of which later. Big cables, forget about wireless, cables about that thick. We have RF signals, frequency signals going through and putting out a lot of spare radiation that would interfere with the radio control. So if you've got the dog between the camera and the scene, whatever, and Tony with the radio control, yes, the dog would run into the scenery and all the camera picture would go like this. But it's a one-off story. We didn't know if it was going to stay or not. At the end of the story, there was actually two endings to that story. And one he stayed, I think stayed on the space station with Professor Marius, and the other one he stayed with the program, i.e. he went with the doctor. He did the latter, he went with the doctor. One funny thing actually, as soon as he became very popular very early on because he was different. It's a bit like at a similar sort of time, we took this the original and best Star Wars. Yes, you can't say yes. The original first three as against the last three, which are now the first three. No, go on, work it out. R2-D2, immediately, something like that. It's cute in that particular way. You know, whether you're a kid or a big kid, doesn't matter. And K9 had the same effect. So we used to get letters in. We're talking pre-email here. Forget that sort of thing. Have you got diagram drawings of the dog? We want to build a model of the dog. Tony never drew a dog. This he did afterwards. You know, he even signed it. Tony Harding there, down there. This was the first drawing. All right, that's a sketch. You can actually see these are coffee mug stains. Stick it on. Yeah, do that. Oh, put your coffee down there. You know, there's some details. The rest of the program still built in it. Tony still had this piece of drawing, so I photographed it. And in fact, you can see there K9 is actually written on the front, not on the side. Things changed as you build it up. We're building this thing in about 2 weeks. 6 people in the department building it. Fitting radio control, which frankly nobody really used before, into it. All for a one-off prop. This is what he looked like. I say he because the voice was male, but he became known as a male dog. This was the early running gear. Anybody knows their Tamiya or similar radio control cars? It was very similar to that. Fine for a Tamiya car, but not for a fiberglass body dog, which is quite heavy. So there was limitations anyway about going over flat floors, more of which later, funny enough, it came back 20 years later. That's me in 1978 or so. Yes, the hair was longer then. With the original dog there in our original workshop. After that first story, I said he stayed and he went on location. This is the Sunmakers, which was shot in Bristol. If you know the UK, Bristol is down south, frankly on the way to Cardiff in Wales, which is now where the programme is made. This was actually on the roof of the WH and WO, the Wills Cigarette Company, when you can mention cigarettes without feeling like a social pariah. It was on the roof of their factory in the Bristol area. There is Tom smiling at the dog. It's no secret that Tom hated the dog. Tom is 6 foot something or other, the dog is 2 foot something or other. Let's get a 2 shot. The dog can't go up to Tom has to grovel around the floor with the dog. You don't ask your star actor to do that too many times. But anyway, we got on with it, he stayed. That is the original radio control system. You'll see there are 2 transmitters. They are Futabas. If you know your radio control, the name will be familiar to you. You will also know that you never put 2 transmitters side by side with the antenna like that because they beat across one to the other. And we're on 27 AM, remember. You know, we're hiding to nothing, frankly. But the dog went through a number of the programs in those early days. He met the first Romana. In fact, the original dog left with the first Romana. He went on location again for the story The Stones of Blood. This time this is the Mark II version, which I designed, I was effects designer on. We had actually, this was the 100th episode of Doctor Who, and it was the first one totally shot on video, so we used lightweight video cameras. Anybody in the media industry, if you say what do you prefer, film or video, you say film. It looks better. But video is the be-all and end-all. Movies are made on video. Movies are made digitally. These are video cameras, not digital cameras, but it's electronic. But it does mean you can see the picture immediately, you can retake if something's wrong, you don't otherwise know until the film's process, and you get back the rushes, the first prints the following day. You will also see Nigel Brackley. He was the guy we brought in to run the dogs most of the time. Because we were busy doing other things. As a effects designer, I don't want to be there running a dog when I've actually got explosions and bits and pieces to sort out. The stone circle, if you've ever been to any English stone circles, we have quite a lot of them, including the most famous one, Stonehenge. Stonehenge is unique. It has the trilithon, the stone on the top of the two uprights. It's the only place in the world that has that, except when they've rebuilt it somewhere else. This is the Rollright stones in Oxfordshire, not that far away, well, UK standard, you know, next door, American standard. It doesn't have trilithon. It has these stones on the outside. We made these. These are fiberglass. The Augury, which were the enemy, the monsters of it. I have a fear of Doctor Who monsters in the sense of we never really did them right because we didn't have the movie budgets and things. And when I saw the Augury become live and move across the moors, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's going to be extras in rubber suits leaping across the moors. And I said, if you want to do that, I want nothing to do with it. If they're stones, they should remain stones. We can make them glow, we can make them float, but they remain stones. I won that one. There are other stories I didn't win, but I won this particular one. So, but of course we had to move them on these trolleys, on duck boards. Frankly, it's the way the Daleks moved as well. There is one of the dogs. I say one of the dogs. People say, how many dogs have there been? I say 1.5. The real one. And we have an American cousin of his who's arrived for the occasion. And if you want to know how big, yes, he's about the right size. Not a bad reproduction of it. A few details wrong. I put the gentleman there correct on it, but no, he's about the right size for it. But he's heavy. You saw earlier some of the earlier works in him. He was heavy. Try and pick him up, you do yourself a mischief. So we had a dummy one. And in fact, in some shots you can see, there's the dog, you know, the doctor's working, there's nothing inside. That one was used so we can carry him around. So that was the half, more of which later. In fact, that is the shot. You can see, there's nothing really in there. There's a couple of blocks instead of wheels. But, I mentioned Nigel Brackley earlier. I don't know why that jumped. I will go back one. Nigel is there. He ran him for a good number of years until basically I took over. The other most important person there is the actor who played the voice, John Leeson, who's still around. Look a bit older now. You'll see him later on. He's provided the voice all for one season when David Riley took over, but John came back. He used to have a modulated device to do the voice. But you find John's a very good mimic. He can do the voice anyway without it. There's Nigel in the studio. There is the original, or one of the second version of the TARDIS console. And you can see the big cameras, these the pedestals, you can see the cameras on top that we used to film all. We all say film, and if it's video, it's still filming. Of course, you always get somebody who's a clever clod. Here's one of the stagehands feeding Canine a piece of cake. So he stays for a good number of stories. This one here actually is Sharda, which is the unfinished